This is episode number 286 of the Homeowner Show. Whether you're DIY or looking to hire, we're here to help you find the best information and options for you and your home. My name is Kevin Hackett, and here with me is Craig Williams.
Hello, and welcome to the Homeowner Show. We're so glad you could join us for another live episode here in the Homeowner Show. How you doing, Kev?
Well, you know what? I'm going to make it. It's been a long couple of days, but, man, as long as it stops raining, I think I'll be fine.
Dude, my wife was out helping clean people's houses out today.
Oh, I don't doubt it.
Everybody in the studio tonight knows who River Plantation, right?
Oh, yeah.
So there was one family in particular that she was telling me about that they moved into a street, new family, they've been there less than a year, and everyone on the street told them, hey, don't worry about getting flood insurance because this street only flooded during Harvey, so it should never, ever happen again.
Oh,
and sure enough, it happened just now. And that's the story I keep hearing is all these people that didn't have flood insurance. And part of the reason a lot of these people didn't have flood insurance was because it was costing them like $700 a month.
Yeah.
For flood insurance?
Yeah, because it's one of those deals where if it's in a floodplain, now you're paying a premium because that's almost double, well, probably not quite that, what you would be paying if it wasn't in a floodplain for the year.
Right. Yeah. It's nuts, man. It's super sad. I mean, some of these are like families that just have nothing.
Right.
And like the one she was telling me about today was a single story home. I mean, like, if you have a 2-story home and it floods, you can move a lot of your possessions up to the second floor. And you might be able to recover. You just got to remodel the downstairs, get all the wet stuff out, and just new floors and all that kind of good stuff. But man, it's crazy.
It's sad. I mean, the crazy thing is you've got a scenario where it only rained in comparison to what happened with Harvey, for example. Mm-hmm. Like 12 to 15 inches, something like that, which is a fourth of what it did during Harvey, but it came down pretty quickly, and they had to release the dam, and they weren't prepared. And once they have to release the dam, it's been really bad.
Yeah, the San Jacinto River Authority has no friends right now.
No,
they can
let me ask you a question.
They can't do anything right. That's the problem.
So let me ask you, because here's the thing. I have this idea. I play a little bit probably devil's advocate on this because I look at it and I go, okay, the people in the San Jacinto River Authority, I don't assume they're idiots.
Sure.
They got there for a reason. They know what they're doing. This isn't their first rodeo. They've got all sorts of variables they're having to play with and figure out what about this? What about this? If I do this, what if I release too much water and now there's not enough water in the lake? Like, what if all these super amazing and then, hey, it's supposed to rain. How much? Well, they say this much. Okay, well, it's all of these variables that they have to play with,
mm-hmm.
and whatever they do, someone's going to be pissed off.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know how they win. And I don't know these people. I don't know how their job works. I'm completely ignorant on this idea. I've never lived on the lake. I don't have a boat. Like, I don't know any of this stuff. But as I'm looking at it, I'm going, these guys surely aren't morons. And yet...
You assume quite a lot.
I know. And yet, everybody, hates them right now. And I get it. Like... What are you supposed to do when your home has flooded for the third time in 7 years because of this problem? Or some people, it's flooding for the first time whenever someone said your house should never flood. You know what I mean? It's not in a quote-unquote floodplain, and yet it's flooded because of the cresting that's happened in San Jacinto. So, I don't know, man. Like, legitimately, do you know, like, who wins in this? Well, how do you win?
So I know a little bit. It's like one of those deals I know enough to get myself into trouble. It's so like what makes it complicated around here. For those of you watching online, we've got Shawn Medlin in the studio, by the way. Feel free to chime in on this at any time. Not that you want to be talking about San Jacinto River Authority. Here's the thing: is water in Houston is complicated.
Of course.
Do you guys remember the drought that like took Conroe, where like boats were sitting in mud and all that kind of stuff. So that caused a lot of homeowners to sue the city of Houston. Do you know why?
No.
Because a lot of people don't realize that Lake Conroe is a reservoir for Lake Houston. And Lake Houston is a reservoir for city proper.
Yeah.
And so when there was a drought, City of Houston started drawing on Lake Houston.
Gotcha.
And when Lake Houston started getting drawn on, well, they said, well, nuts to that. We're going to draw on our reservoir, and pulled all the water out of Lake Conroe. And so people, that had never happened before because we hadn't had a drought like that in decades. And so all these people who had built these multi-million-dollar houses on Lake Conroe, all of a sudden they're, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 boats sitting in the mud, and they're looking for somebody to blame and to hold responsible. And so they start they understood the chain of command, so they start suing the city of Houston for like, hey, like, why'd you ruin my property?
Right.
So it gets complicated. And so like, but you can't have it both ways, right?
Right.
So now it's like, okay, so now who gets to make the call on whose property gets flooded when you open the dam and the spillway from these reservoirs? Well, when the San Jacinto River Authority opened those floodgates, well, it started flooding Kingwood. Well, what's on Kingwood? That's Lake Houston.
Lake Houston.
And so it's like the exact reverse is happening, where like we're dumping water out of Conroe, but it's flooding Kingwood.
Right. Yeah.
And so,
dude, there's still some places down there that are like the roads are closed and stuff like that. I mean, it's crazy.
Oh, dude, I was at a house today that is really, really nice house. The boat dock, you couldn't even see it. It was at least 3 feet underwater still.
Yeah. Well, there's the over here on 105. There's the golf course, the golf range, which floods all the time.
Right.
But they put in like new hitting stations, and they put TVs in there, and the TVs are probably
toast.
They're probably 6 foot off the ground at least.
Right.
Maybe 7 because you're hitting and all this kind of stuff. They were underwater.
Yeah, I don't doubt it.
And again, it's a TV. I'm not worried about it. I'm just talking about the level.
The level of it, yeah.
I mean, that's it. Wow. It's crazy, dude. Absolutely crazy. Anyway,
I was actually like, I mean, technically out of the country. Did you guys stay dry during this whole thing?
We did.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, our house is high and dry as far as that goes. But I mean, it's saturated. I mean, everything's saturated.
Yeah.
But I think in my house we had at least 12 inches come down. Whew. So
here's a good lead-in question for Shawn.
Oh boy.
Since we're talking about flooding, what would, I mean, like, I assume you guys have protocols in place if high water comes to your facilities.
Yes.
Like, what do you guys do?
Well,
not that it's ever happened, but
well, first of all, hang on. Before I answer that question, Mr. Craig, thank you guys for having me on your show again.
Absolutely.
Thank you
Holy cow.
On.
I've been
a triple crown.
It is a triple crown. A three-time guest.
A three-peat.
Man. A three-peat. I love that. So, in fact, you guys probably don't know this. The very first time I was on your show was probably like in 2019. That was my very first podcast to ever be on.
That's awesome.
And so, you always remember your first, right? And so you guys...
Maybe not fondly, but...
Yeah, I know, yeah. But, man, a lot has changed since 2019.
Yeah.
And it's been a lot. But to answer your question, yeah, we've got protocols in place. We lost power a couple days in a row, and
really?
That was kind of interesting because we don't have our generator in yet.
Okay.
In the new
facility.
In the new facility.
Okay.
And I found myself running out to get food for residents because the staff couldn't cook.
Right.
And thank goodness that HEB carries they've got a huge generator.
They do.
Yeah.
And so they were business as usual, and I just went to the barbecue place and
nice.
Load me up.
They load me
That's
up.
pretty good barbecue, by the way.
It is good barbecue.
Yeah.
It is. In fact, the residents were all like, hey, we're going to need you to do this.
Can this be a regular?
It's the brisket beans.
It is the brisket beans,
Oh,
man.
my gosh.
Yeah. So, anyways.
Is this like, I've never had this. Is this like baked beans with brisket in it?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay.
It is.
Very legit.
And it is, and me and barbecue. Like, I'm all over the place.
Kevin has a spreadsheet.
I do.
Wow.
We actually had one of our listeners request the spreadsheet.
Yeah. You can't be telling people that. Now more people are going to be asking.
Oh, yeah.
They requested it. That didn't mean anything. But anyway, so but their brisket beans may be the best beans that I've ever had. They're that good. That's saying something. They're pretty good. But so you had to go out and get food for them and everything.
Yeah, that made
which
it,
I mean, you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. So I don't know if everybody knows. Tell people real quick, what do you do? I know it's a very broad question, but specifically with the residents.
Housing.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm founder and CEO of a company called Seasons Assisted Living and Memory Care. We have 3 locations, one in Navasota, one in Conroe, and then our newest location in Magnolia on 1488. We built that one from the ground up.
That was awesome, by the way.
Thank you, man. It was the project that would never end. And, if you ever want to just use me as a case study for bad things that could happen, dude, I always just crazy things happen in my world, know, and they're always learning experiences, but, it's crazy. But anyways, we care for people, right? I mean, people are living in our facilities and we navigate it, but we've got different protocols in place for, high water or, for flooding and, knock on wood, I've never had to evacuate, cause that would be interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got, we got some healthy folks, but then we got folks in wheelchairs or in bed and, we got, several that have Alzheimer's. And so that would be tricky. We have a plan, but it's, I never want to hit that red button.
That's a big button to hit for sure.
100%.
Well, and many of these folks have family nearby.
Yeah.
And so navigating not just doing what's best for the resident, but also probably what their family member wants you to do.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And now you're navigating a whole nother side of thing where it's like, hey, we're evacuating. This is the best thing for our resident. And, their daughter over here is going, I need you to bring her to my house. And you're like, don't know I don't know how that works, right? Yeah. That's a big thing.
Yeah, it is a big thing.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, especially with, flooding and things like that.
Yeah.
And, we made it through a big freeze. When was that? Like in 21, 22?
Yeah.
I mean, that was an interesting experience, but my team is really good at navigating stuff like that. And I'm really proud of the way they handled it. And, I'm just ready. I'm happy to see the water finally starting to subside a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. I think at this point, the forecast is looking good for that, but
I kept seeing posts from, again, like we were out of town. And so like, it was interesting watching it from like far away. Yeah. One, because like we have all our animals and livestock here that we were just in complete disillusion as to what's even happening with them. And like, we're having to rely on other people to tell us like, oh yeah, this is fine. Oh yeah, they're fine. We found them. Okay. They're good. All that kind of stuff. But just and I can't imagine what's going through people's heads as the waters continue to rise. Like, like what, and like you'd like to think that you're prepared, but like that's one of those deals that like even having processes and protocols in place, like you're at the mercy of what's happening, and a lot of times it's like sometimes plans just get thrown away
too.
Yeah,
it's so unknown. Often it's like, look, we think this is going to happen, and then whenever it starts happening, it's like, how bad is it going to get? If we're right here, if it gets no worse, we're okay.
Right.
And then, there's a tipping point somewhere, and that's where protocols come into place, obviously. But it's still a hairy situation.
100%. Yeah. My heart goes out to those that are, flooding like this. I mean, like Craig, you were mentioning, someone in a single level home. I mean, dude, that's devastating.
Yeah.
I mean, that's truly devastating, and it's very disruptive and so anyways.
Yeah, for sure. Well, you've been out of the country.
Yeah.
Not really in the country, but out of the what is the word?
Continental U.S.
That's the one.
Yeah.
I can't speak.
Yeah, no, we took our 18th anniversary trip to St. John. We'll do a trip report episode.
Yeah, we need to do that.
So I mean, like I don't know how many minutes we're into the show now, but like to bring
15.
everybody 15. Thank you. 15 minutes in, we'll tell you guys exactly what's happening. Last week we had Christy on.
Yeah,
Christy's a real estate agent here in Conroe that's been working with older folks in our community, transitioning out of home ownership and into either like assisted living or nursing home facilities. and helping those families manage that transition from the real estate side of things. And so when she came to me with this idea, I was like, look, I mean, like, we've had Shawn on before. I think this would be a really interesting topic to do in kind of a series where we're like, let's talk to Christy about her experience selling the house, getting someone detached from their property, and then having a conversation with Shawn about what it looks like for a resident to actually move out of a home and into assisted living. And then having you guys come back together to have a conversation about how we can best serve these people holistically through that whole process. Because, we're all sitting around the table, and I think correct me if I'm wrong, all of our folks are still around.
They are.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so, like, all of us are kind of looking down the barrel of a gun in this situation here pretty quick.
Yeah.
In at least in the next decade.
Yeah, I mean, we've made a little bit of a different transition, with my mother-in-law.
You've kind of made some moves already.
Yeah,
I mean,
and most people that listen to the show regularly know, but if you don't, my mother-in-law, she's 73. She's not that old, and if you knew her, you would not...
Like 20 years ago, that's a crazy sentence.
Oh, I know. But
right?
But you've met my mother-in-law.
Yeah, no,
Does she act anywhere near
crazy active.
Yeah, she acts like better than a lot of 53-year-olds, but she lived in East Texas, and she sold her house and moved onto our property and built a house onto our property, and so she's right there with us, which is great. But not everybody can do that. Not everybody wants to do that, and
right.
so But if you've got a parent or a grandparent, whoever, who needs to move, well. We heard in episode 285, if you haven't listened to it, go listen to it, from Christy. There's just so much like taking advantage of people that are just, good older people that want to trust everybody and want to just, assume everything's good, and they don't want to put anybody out. And so they get taken advantage of many times, but all they really need is the right type of care, whether that's moving into an assisted living place or a nursing home or, I called it a 55 and alive place last week, one of those communities that is specifically designed for an older community. There's just a lot of options out there. And so I get one of the things that I think we need to ask for some clarification on is, what is the difference because my grandpa is 96. He's 96. He lives in a nursing home. What is the difference between a nursing home and an assisted living place?
Excellent question. It's the nursing.
Okay.
It's the nursing part. So in an assisted living facility, we focus on what we call the ADLs, the activities of daily living. So my staff, we're helping people get up in the morning. It's pretty much anything that happens from the time your alarm clock goes off, right? So you've got, we're helping people get dressed, get them to the bathroom, get them fed. We're showering folks, those that need that, a full assistance, that level. But so again, it's non-medical. Mm-hmm. That's really the big key differentiator. I don't have to have a nurse on staff 24/7. Whereas in skilled nursing facilities, or sometimes referred to as like a SNF unit, it's skilled nurses that are there, and that's medical care.
Okay.
And we can unpack some of that, but
Does that have anything to do with like administering medication and maybe even like as far as like the medication side of things? Is that where, give me just maybe a snippet of what that means.
Okay. So, for someone to end up in a just a full on skilled nursing facility, they would have to have some pretty high level of need, from a medical standpoint, where they've got to be monitored, or, maybe they've got something that's, an open wound, and they need some serious wound care or things like that, or they're just incredibly sick, you know, and, you know, I don't hear of a whole lot, you know, we're a private pay facility. So, you know, we don't accept Medicaid, and, you know, the families that we serve, you know, they have the resources to, you know, pay privately for their loved one to come into one of our homes. And, but at any rate, you know, the way we're set up and the way we're licensed, and this is, you know, I've gotten back into operations recently, and after a couple of years of working on the business but not in the business.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, even today I gave a tour to a daughter that's, you know, her mom is, you know, at I call them a big box facility. I mean, it's like 4 stories and, you know, 100 residents per floor, you know, and, you know, the care in those kind of places they're not that great. Let's just be honest.
Well, that has something to do specifically with the ratio of nurse to
caregivers to resident ratio.
Right.
And now I've got a very interesting story for you guys.
Okay.
I just managed to convince my own grandmother to move into my newest assisted living facility.
Really?
Oh,
My
wow.
last living grandparent.
How old is she?
She is 94.
Okay.
And so here's the backstory. This past December, I get a call. You know, my grandfather passed a few years ago. They lived in Pearland. I mean, dude, everything that you're talking about is actually happening right now in my own family.
Yeah.
And it's wild to me. Anyways, she's at home alone. She started having some falls, and, you know, a couple times had to go to the ER. Thank God. She had one of those bracelets. You press it, and the fire department comes, and they've already got a key to your house, or they know where it's at.
Yeah.
And my mom texted me a photo of the kitchen, and it looked like a damn crime scene. I mean, there was blood everywhere.
Oh,
you know,
man.
just, you know, you hit your head, it bleeds worse than anything, right?
Yeah. Sure.
Anyways, I'm like, oh my goodness, like, come on. And so you know, and I love my grandmother, but she's a stubborn old gal.
Of course.
And,
Sure.
but I went to her and I said, you know, your grandson just built, he owns his own assisted living facility, for starters. I just built a brand new one. Please let us care for you.
Right.
You know, and it took they've been in this home over 50 years.
Wow.
Yeah, it's gonna be.
But, you know,
That's home.
That is home, but, you know, she's living there by herself.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't watch television. I mean, to me, that's like the definition of insanity. Just sitting there in an empty house and just, you know, and it wasn't safe anymore.
Right.
And so I got her to move into Seasons, and it's been amazing to kind of see how her life is being enriched now because she's around other people. She's eating better than she ever has. And, you know, she's finally has subscribed to, you know, what this new chapter in her life. And meanwhile, behind the scenes, my mom and my aunt and my uncle, they're emptying out her house, and they're getting ready to put it on market and get it sold. You know.
Well, and I think that's one of the things that we wanted to talk a little bit about, especially, I mean, from the real estate side, but obviously you're experiencing some of this right now. Is, you know, I don't think you want to wait until your mother is 94, 95. Because chances are that you're 74, 75 when you're doing that. And, like, I'm sorry, like, when I'm 74, 75, I don't want to be cleaning out a house.
Right.
You know, that's going to be overexerting myself to a certain degree, I would imagine. I mean, like, this is the conversation I have with my parents right now. I think they would probably like to move into a different, maybe smaller place, but they can't mentally wrap their head around getting everything out of the place that they're in now.
They've got a lot of stuff.
They got a lot of stuff. And they're like, what would we do with it? And, you know, like, that's...
Because here's the truth. You get rid of it.
That's the thing.
But that's the problem, is whenever you've accumulated these things that I love, and your mom she is a decorator and a designer in all respects of things. And so she's got stuff.
Still is, man. Like, while we were out of town, she redid all of our kids' rooms.
I know.
Wow.
I mean, like, completely redecorated them, like, brought in new furniture, like, just, I mean, that was all their birthday presents this year.
But most of that stuff she didn't go get. Most of it she had. Like,
Or
made.
Yeah.
And so that's just, but that's the thing, is like, I've got all this stuff and I need it. It's mine. I need it.
Yeah.
I kept it because I need it.
But like you run what you run into, and like again, like this is like sort of a more of a philosophical conversation. But like your stuff at the end of the day, your stuff you don't get to take it with you,
Right.
So like ultimately it doesn't matter,
Right.
But like you're still nostalgic, and you care about those things because sometimes it's like pictures of your brothers and your sisters and your mom and your dad, and you want to make sure that those go to the right people and that they stay in the family. And I get all that, but like if you stay there too long, you're leaving it up to other people to make those decisions for you rather than doing it for yourself on the front end.
Yeah.
And you may not be as happy with those decisions that some of those children get to exert on your things.
Right.
I mean, I don't know how it's going with your grandma, but
I think,
or she just stepped away.
She is finally, she's subscribed to what's going on in her life,
Good.
and
how long of a process though was that, having that conversation with was the fall kind of like a thing that was like wake up time, or did it take?
It was, but
okay.
I mean, it was literally, and there was even a time after she moved in with us where she was, she's missing her home,
Sure,
missing her thing. And, I didn't do this, but I think my mom or maybe my aunt did this. They pulled out their cell phone and showed my grandmother the pictures of her head and the pictures of her kitchen and said, look.
She didn't realize how bad it was.
No, she didn't realize how bad it was.
Yeah.
And of course, dude, I could go down so many routes with this, but a lot of these older folks, and I'm seeing this a lot lately, you go to the doctor, and you go to the doctor and at that point in time, they prescribe you something, say, for blood pressure. Okay.
Right.
And, a lot of these older folks, they're set it and forget it. Right.
Oh,
So
yeah.
they get their meds on mail order, or it's automatically refilled. And I mean, literally sometimes decades will go by taking the same med that their general practitioner gave them back in the day. Right.
Right.
Now their bodies have changed over time. Things have happened and they don't necessarily need that medicine.
Right.
And so, I'm dealing with this right now. And so when someone comes into Seasons and moves in with us, one of the first things I ask is I bring in a doctor and we do a top down kind of review of because I had someone move in this past Friday and they got mom all set up in her room. The kids have been working for a couple of days, made her room really nice, all new furniture. And then when they finally bring her over, and then the son comes in my office with like a big trash bag full of bottles, pill bottles, vitamins, medicine. Here you go. Here's mom's meds.
Yeah.
And I'm like, holy cow, that's a lot of meds.
Yeah.
And I said, how much? He was kind of lost at this point. And I said, how much of that do you think she really needs? And he goes, Shawn, some of these she's been on for like years and years. So, it's things change over time.
They have
right?
to.
They do change.
Yeah, they do.
It's wild.
Yeah. And it's one of those deals where,
Yeah, I mean,
the amount of neglect that winds up happening, and it's not purposeful. I don't think it's purposeful, but so often it's like, well, this is what I've always done, and you don't recognize that
100%.
there needs to be a different amount of this is done this way now.
Sure.
It literally an additional 10 years goes by a lot of times, and it's like, what's changed? Well, everything, but they don't think everything's changed, and so there's a lot that needs to be done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
how often when you have that doctor come in and do that prescription review, how often is it? Just, I mean, if you could guesstimate in your head, how often is it that your residents are being over medicated? Do you think
it's pretty common?
Is it?
Yeah, they're over medicating. Sometimes they're, for those kind of like my grandmother. This is again, dude. What a perfect episode to talk about. Talk about close to home.
Yeah.
My grandmother, love her to death, but again, she's home alone. She gets a little confused, and it's very common and they're taking their own meds, but to overdose themselves, because they forget. They take a dose and then they'll go do something for an hour and they can't remember if they took it or not. So they double down on it and they take another one, and so they're self-administering meds that, there needs to be some oversight into the entire process.
Well, and so, going back to, what I was saying earlier about ratios and like the number of nurses that are in a nursing home versus the number of, people that are in your facility taking care of the residents, it's a different ratio.
Yeah.
And you're paying for the ratio, but you're getting a different level of care.
Yeah.
And with that comes a different level of longevity of life and quality of life. Yeah. I'm dealing with right now. I'd mentioned my grandpa. Like he's got some stuff that includes neglect at the nursing home that I'm like, man, I think a lawyer needs to get involved in some of this kind of stuff. And it's one of those deals where I don't know how to deal with all of that, but I sometimes look at it and go, man, I wish he could have had an opportunity to be in the type of facility that y'all offer, because it is just a different level.
It is. And, I always say, senior living, we can do it better in a smaller environment. Mm-hmm. We're choosing to be small. Navasota and Conroe, those are licensed for 14 residents. Magnolia 16. We don't want to go above 16. And because again, it's about the personal touches. It's about, and we always want to be nearby. We want to be very, I treat everyone like they're a fall risk, whether they, need it or not. But there's advantages to being small, and in senior living, it's a good thing because the care goes up.
Well, I remember one of the things you told us in that very first podcast that you did with us, that they get to participate in making their menus.
Yeah.
And
that's huge.
That is huge. Like, I get to eat what I want.
Yeah. We get their feedback a lot. And of course, when a new family moves in, I was working with another lady that's moving in, her mom this week, actually, from a 55 and older apartment kind of setup.
Yeah.
And, but I call it the download. When I'm meeting with the family, I'm like, I need to know everything there is to know about your mom. I want to know what kind of music she likes, what movies, does she like brownies, pancakes? And because the more information we can get, our staff can kind of customize her care plan. And we call it person-centered care. Okay. That's kind of our thing, is because we can individualize a lot in these big places, like you've mentioned. Right. It's very hard to do that when you've got one staff member to 25, residents to take care of.
And look, I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus on this, because when you are in a facility that the ratios are not healthy, I'm going to say healthy because I don't think they're healthy.
That's a good word.
And you're dealing with, instead of maybe 2 residents, and I don't know what your ratio is, now they're dealing with 20.
Oh, no, at least 20.
Exactly.
So so a lot of our families come from the big places. Once the kids figure out it's not all there, it's not all cracked up. And then, it's kind of fun to watch, actually. I've hired a lot of caregivers over the years that have worked in the big places. And when they come to our place and it's small and, 2 of them are in a residential neighborhood, and then of course the new one has turned out amazing. But they're thrilled because they're used to working, on the 3rd floor, one caregiver. So in our setting, for example, it's like one caregiver to 5 residents. Okay. 1 to 5, 1 to 4, 1 to 5.
That makes sense.
Yeah. But it's like 1 to 25 in these big places. And so, dude, that's a lot of people to pass out meds to. And, if they're incontinent, you got to change them, get them cleaned up and all that stuff. And it is just, I don't know. I call it a warehouse.
So one of the things that my grandpa is experiencing, I feel like this is, I'm not trying to overtake this with just family,
Kevin.
but here's the thing.
Why are you hijacking the show?
I know, man.
Such a diva.
It's normal.
It's great. I love it.
This is normal. Is one of the things that and again, he's losing his mind, but he just yells all the time.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that nobody wants to go in there. And so you get that times 25. It's like, he's going to get neglected. And other people are going to get neglected, not necessarily because they're trying to, but it's like, it's your turn to go in there.
Can you share, or do you want to share publicly what his diagnosis is and how he got there?
There's no official diagnosis
at
all. But he's I mean, he's just kind of losing his mind. And what I mean by that is what he does is he'll ask the same question over and over and over, and you'll answer him, and he'll ask another question. He'll go back to the same question. He'll ask the same other question, and he'll go back and forth. And it's always like this. Hey, what is today? What time is it? What is today? What time is it? And that it's over and over and over. Yeah. And so but I don't even this sounds I don't enjoy going because he's not who I remember him being,
right?
You know, and so and he lives a long way away, so it's not. If he lived closer, I would, sure. But he lives like 10 hours away from me.
Got it.
But when I do go, I'm like, this is not the life that, and also. And I know a lot of people get here. He said, I remember him saying, I don't know how many times I heard him say this, Kevin, I never want to go to a nursing home. And now he's been there for 7 or 8 years.
Is where he's at in a nursing home, or is it?
It is a nursing home.
Okay.
Yeah. But this is the difference. And I hate it because it is what it is, and it's what can be afforded. He's a vet. Yep. And so he has certain opportunities because of that, but the opportunities are slim. And it is what it is. He has the opportunity that he has. But let me just kind of transition this for a moment. I think that this is something that I, at 43 years old, need to be thinking about for my children so that I can do what I need to do if I need to not live in my home any longer,
right?
That I can live where I want to, so that my kids know that I'm being taken care of. They don't have to take care of me every moment, and I'm getting the level of care. But that's going to require a level of saving that I'm going to have to be able to afford a certain level of facility. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think we need to talk about that a little bit more amongst our generation.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, and I think they have like financial instruments.
Like vehicles?
Yeah, financial vehicles that you can use for those kinds of things.
Well, and I tell you what the vehicle is. I mean, there's a couple, but it always makes me happy when a resident comes in and they purchased a long-term care insurance policy.
There it is.
Back in the day. And it's fewer than like 2%. I mean, you don't hear much about it. Usually they bought it through their company back in the day and they just kept paying the premium, and it pays for all or a majority of that monthly bill.
Wow.
And, every month I fill out paperwork. I sign that, yes, Grandpa was here during this time, and he never left the building, and I'll submit our invoices to their insurance company, and then they will stroke a check or direct deposit back to the family. But again, I forget what the latest stat is, but it's like fewer than 2% of people have a long-term care insurance policy.
That's crazy for like the amount of people that are about to be 60 plus.
Well, so I mean there's 10,000 people turning 65 every day, and the big wave is coming. Right now, we're still dealing with the silent generation. Okay, folks in their 80s, 90s, but the baby boomers are coming.
Right,
and that's the big wave. There's not enough beds, to online and assisted living we're actually not going to have enough beds in 10 years to accommodate all of the baby boomers.
Right.
It's wild.
So here, I pulled up the numbers from the World Health Organization on this just because I was curious. And this is as of 2022. It says by 2030, 1 in 6 people in the world will be aged 60 years or over. And it says at this time, the share of the population aged 60 years and over will increase from 1 billion in 2020 to 1.4 billion. By 2050, the world's population of people aged 60 years and older will double to 2.1 billion.
I think there's a lot of things that we can probably attribute that to. Probably healthcare is different and all these sorts of things. But
Well, this isn't about people living longer. This is just about the number of people who are going to be 6 years and older.
No, I understand that,
And
but
so,
I mean,
like, you-
I think we are living longer, though.
We are living.
no, yeah,
we are
that-
living longer.
yeah, we are.
But like you're also talking. You're talking about people living longer. Added onto that, we have just a bigger population
In
of
that number
people.
Yeah.
is the
in
baby
that-
boomers.
Yes.
The baby boomers.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be a real thing.
So what do you think is what's going to happen? Like, what do you think has to happen? What do you think needs to happen? I mean, are we talking like more, like in-home nursing, or what do you think?
I think that, I mean, as an entrepreneur, that wave also creates opportunity.
Absolutely.
Okay. And, assisted living, I first got in this business because I wanted to get into real estate.
Mm-hmm.
My wife's grandfather had dementia, and I watched her family scramble around trying to figure out what to do with grandpa. And, dude, it's just kind of like a perfect storm that I found myself, in this business. And, it's a purpose-driven business. It's a calling. It comes with its own sets of problems and challenges. But, I think that there's a ton of opportunity for entrepreneurs to start their own. There are a lot of, smaller care homes, that are just, I call them personal care homes.
I've
They're
seen those.
unlicensed.
Yeah.
And we can unpack some of that if you want. But, that they just, there's no accountability. You've got some open beds in your room, and you just, charge everybody $3,000 a month or $4,000, or maybe it's like $2,200. I mean, whatever. But it'd be like you taking your house right now and just moving, some folks in.
Yeah. So that actually, we've got a lady at our church that lives in one of those places, and I didn't know she lived in one of those places, but we were doing some caroling around Christmas.
Okay.
And she was on the list, so we showed up, and I'm like, this is someone's house, and they told us that she was in like a home, a facility of some sort. But they're like, no, this is actually it. So I knock on the door, and a lady that I assumed was a nurse answered the door, and she was like, well, everybody's in bed. I'm like, what do you mean everybody's in bed? I am so confused by this. What do you mean everybody's in bed? And what I found out was that it's like a 4-bedroom home, and they've got like 8 people that live there, or 4 people. I don't know how many people.
Hopefully not 8.
They got people living there, and someone lives there with them.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I'm sure that there's multiple people that rotate in, but that's kind of that's what you're talking about, right?
That's exactly what I'm talking about. And it's it's a personal care home. Now, let me tell you, these personal care homes, especially in the Houston area, and especially in Harris County, it's a real issue because, again, not everyone's coming at this from the right place. They're doing it to make a buck.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I have a real problem with people like that because they're not putting, the residents first. And, even when we were getting our building, online, and I was spending a lot of time with the Montgomery County Fire Marshal's office, and the fire marshal's on our location. And, he had a lot of stories to tell me, because, in the state of Texas, in a personal care home, you can only have 3 residents. You can have 4 if the 4th one is related to you.
Okay.
Okay.
So it probably wasn't 8.
Well, no, hang on. But here's where it gets interesting.
Okay.
He was telling me, the fire marshal was telling me stories about going into some of these homes. Someone files a complaint. And let me tell you how these things unwind themselves. Is they'll accept a resident in there, and maybe the resident has dementia or Alzheimer's, and it's not secure, and they end up heading out the front door and on the street. And neighbors get involved, or they get lost, or, bad things happen because when there's not accountability.
Right.
And so, but, the fire marshal was telling me, and I hear a lot about this, these people will go into a market and lease a home. I'm not even make it your own personal home. They'll just go lease a home in a neighborhood, even with an HOA, and they'll set up shop. And, sometimes it's for seniors, but other times it's for, sober living, or it could be a boys' home or a girls' home. But it's just under the radar, and they've set up shop. And again, I'm all about the highest roads possible, the highest degree of accountability. And so, I'm not a big fan of those kind of places.
Well, of course,
just because, for everything I've already mentioned. So, but yeah, that is a route, and I'm sure there's some good ones. Don't get me wrong. I know a couple of folks that they've kind of managed to build a little brand, and they're doing a good job. They've got very high standards. But if you want to go above 4 and you want to take the high roads, you got to get a license and put in some fire and sprinklers and go about it the right way.
So I was going to ask you what the difference was between, like, because you were saying like unlicensed, unregulated. I mean, like, to me that always means like there's some sort of agency that's looking over your shoulder.
Yeah. So to be a licensed assisted living facility, there's a lot of hoops you got to jump through.
Right.
And but there's accountability that comes with that. I mean, there is Texas Health and Human Services Commission is a real organization, and they have big divisions and they have surveyors. And, I welcome accountability, but these surveyors will just pop in anytime unannounced, and they can walk in my front door, show their badge, or if they're laminated, whatever. And then they'll say, hey, how many residents you got? Well, I got 12. Okay, cool. Why don't you pull 4 resident files and let's go sit down. And then they can ask to look at my meds. They can count pills if they want to. I mean, there's a very high degree of accountability. And they have to make sure that we're doing fire drills and, all the way down to, getting a thermostat and measuring the temperature of the water coming out of the faucets.
Wow.
Putting a thermostat in the fridge. I mean, I got to maintain fridge and freezer logs. I mean, it's next level accountability. Yeah. But, we want to do that. We want to be licensed because, we get recognized as being, one of the best. And I think that just shows people, it shows our audience that, we're down for the challenge, so to speak.
Yeah, and I'm asking because like I'm also in like a highly regulated industry.
Sure.
Like how often are those guys coming through?
Well,
I know it's unpredictable because they can come anytime, but like on average, like you say, like once every year, like how many visits?
Maybe once.
Maybe once.
Yeah.
Okay.
But then COVID made things a little weird, right?
Sure.
Because and of course our licenses for each of our facilities they're 3-year licenses. We got to go through a renewal process. But with COVID. The surveyors slowed down, and but they're around, and they show up.
Well, and I want to dial in on this because I think when you say once a year, people go, "Oh my gosh, only once a year."
Yeah.
But like what I think people need to understand is that really means that you have to have your stuff together.
Oh, yeah.
Because when those guys come in once a year, they are fully up your rectum.
100%.
Only once a year means a lot of slack can happen from month to month to month. Nobody's been here. We're not going to do that, or we're just going to slip on that. And all of a sudden, inspector comes, boom.
Yeah. If state shows up, to do a survey, and by the way, I've had this. We have to have these required postings in the entryway. All these different notices and our licenses on the wall, but. I've had instances I've been doing this for a while now. I'm going into like year 8 or 9. But I've had staff, caregivers that I've hired that I didn't think they were doing a good job. And, they, I terminated their employment. They got pissed off at me, and on their way out, they just called the 1-800 number and just and filed a complaint. They're neglecting and or just making up stuff, right? Because they lost their job, and these state surveyors, they've gotten really good at kind of knowing,
weeding that out.
Yeah.
Where did you work in the last year?
Yeah. Exactly. No. when someone files an anonymous report, but they're very specific, go see Mr. Tom in room 3 and look at his blood pressure medication. Okay. Well, how would you know that unless you weren't there? You know what I'm saying? So,
Yeah.
Anyways, but yeah, dude, the accountability, it's off the chain, but again, I welcome it because that's just the right thing to do.
Yeah. So one of the things you mentioned that I want to dial back in just a moment is you mentioned that you think that there's opportunity not just for you but for other people across the nation, wherever. Is that something you've ever considered doing some coaching with?
Dude, I swear, I feel like that I had no plans of mentioning this tonight. Because I didn't know what we were going to talk about.
Sure.
So, which is always kind of fun with you guys because, so yes, I've started a new company. It's called carehome.io.
Okay.
I just finished shooting a 12-hour video course.
All right.
And I built a studio and brought in some pros. And dude, it's hard to shoot a course and talk and edit and just everything. I mean, it's been going on forever.
It's a lot.
We're on the tail end. What carehome.io is, it's a platform. It's web-based. It's education plus software. So I've taken all of my favorite tools that I use in my own business, and I've created this platform where you pay monthly and you can have all this education. I give people all these spreadsheets, financial calculators, tools, but then I bundle it with software. So I've got a CRM.
Oh, nice.
I've got I can give you a marketing phone number that you can use and for your marketing and text SMS stuff. I mean, we've gone next level, my team that I'm hired. So we're excited. That's launching in just a few weeks.
Dude, that's awesome.
Carehome.io.
Congrats, man.
But let me tell you I've always kind of coached or consulted other people in this business, but I'm in a lot of these assisted living Facebook groups,
Sure.
right? And there's a lot of them. And all these newbie questions that are coming around. And, people, hey, I want to take my home out in the country and, I think it'd make for a really good care home. Where do I start?
Yeah.
And so I'm like, man, and there's other people in this education space. But I feel like I can coach it better because I'm living it. I'm doing
Sure.
it. There's a lot of bad information on the internet.
Of course.
And so,
No.
yes.
Yeah,
Seriously,
sorry, Craig.
It's hard to believe, man.
My world has been shattered.
Bubble burst.
Yeah, so for your listeners, if you want to learn how to start your own residential assisted living facility, go to carehome.io and get on the waiting list. Put in your name, your email address, and we'll let you know when we go live.
That's awesome.
And I'm going to walk you through every single step to zoning, HOA, construction. I mean, I've kind of lived, I've pretty much been through every single avenue on this deal. And then we talk about raising capital. We talk about hiring staff. I mean, just all the things that go into starting your own care home.
Right.
Because I do think there's opportunity for good operators.
Sure.
Good operators. And by the way, it's worth mentioning, and this is new. This is hot off the press. Genworth, which is a leading insurance company and a leading long-term care insurance provider, they just updated their national average rate in the U.S. for assisted living is over $5,200 a month now. Per bed for a private room, $5,200 a month. Now, that's average across the U.S.
Right.
Texas is, I think it's in the fives now. Boise, Idaho is like 3,300. You go to the DC area, it's like 7 to 9. But on average,
Right.
$5,200 a bed. Think about that. So, if you got four of those, you got four beds, 25 grand a month, whatever the number is, and then you get staff, and
Sure.
you take it from there.
It can be a business.
It can be a business.
I mean, obviously it is. I mean,
is a
that's,
business.
I'm saying
That's
that,
what
but to your point, and here's the thing that I love, because there's a lot of people listening to this is like, wow, that took a turn, because we were talking about caring for a 96-year-old grandpa to now making money off of it.
Right.
But here's the truth: you want the good guys making money off of this. That's what you want, because the good guys are going to continue to build more facilities to take care of more people. And those are the people that you want really working the business. It's the bad actors that you want to kind of get out of there. So if you have an entrepreneurial spirit and this is something that's interesting to
100%.
you, then what are you going to do? Again, going back to the question, whenever these younger people in their late 50s or early 60s, when they need a facility, now let's go ahead and start the process.
100%.
You know?
Well, it's crazy. I turned 50 this year.
Wow.
This month, actually.
Happy birthday.
And, thanks, man. I don't want to talk about it. I'm really struggling with this birthday. By the way. So, but dude, my kids, they've kind of grown up in this business a little bit, and they back in the day, they didn't understand. They were my older boys. They were in high school. They didn't understand why Dad quit his job and went all in on working with old people. And it's a business play and a real estate play, and that gets very interesting.
Sure.
And so, but at any rate, I've already got my room picked out when it's time for me to go.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
And the kids know exactly which room it is, and I've but it is nice to have that in my own back pocket.
Sure.
If I need it. I've already been able to tap into it for someone in my own family, my grandmother. We talked about that.
Yeah.
But even my parents, when they've come down to the new Magnolia building, and they were like, man, I want to stay in my home, but if I had to go somewhere else, like this is legit.
Yeah.
Oh no, it is.
Yeah.
Like it's awesome.
Thank you, man.
It really, really is. So,
I've not been there.
You haven't?
Come on.
No, I need to make it happen.
Yeah, you don't get invited there. You don't get boots.
come
it's a
Christmas.
tough life for you.
Bring your Christmas carolers.
Oh yeah,
I'm
we
being
should.
serious.
Yeah.
Bring them. We love volunteers. Last weekend we had a bunch of kids from Legacy come and plant fresh flowers in the flower beds. A little
That's
community
awesome.
project, and it's just super cool. And my homes are licensed for both assisted living and memory care.
Yeah.
Under one roof. There's no lockdown wing. There's no, separate unit. It's all one building. But, we got some healthy folks in there.
Yeah.
And I've got several residents, including my grandmother. They've got a cell phone. If they don't like something, they'll call. But,
Sure.
But then we've got some that do have full blown Alzheimer's, and we're dealing with some of those behaviors and some of those needs. So it keeps it interesting, but we love volunteers, man.
Yeah.
We and it lights the residents up.
Sure.
So please, and to your listeners, yes, come go to meetseasons.com, send us a message, and let's get something set up. Tomorrow we've got a string quartet coming.
Oh, that's
by.
awesome.
Cool.
And the residents are pumped.
Of course.
and
Yeah.
they're going to come
What
by.
time?
2:30.
I might show up.
2:30.
There's a show.
That's right.
Well, Craig, you didn't know. I went ahead and put you on the activity calendar.
Okay.
Just an acoustic set, if
Yeah,
you don't mind.
I'm there for it, man. Yeah, we can do it.
Amazing.
Dude, I had to. I played a wedding 2 weeks ago now, and the bride I think was 77, and the groom was 85.
Stop.
Yeah,
Wow.
it was awesome.
Amazing.
Like the bride came down the aisle, and the preacher doing the ceremony said, he goes, "I'm just gonna say out loud what everybody else is thinking. What the hell's wrong with y'all?"
Wow. Dude, that's
man.
crazy, man.
Yeah.
What a
So, hey, real quick, thank you to our sponsors for
Yeah.
this episode. We've got our newest one, which is True Texas Solar.
Right.
We love working with those guys. We've done a couple live shows with them now, but probably the most overqualified solar company that you'll ever come across. I mean, with meteorologists on staff, engineers on staff.
Crazy.
We met some guys on staff there that were from NASA.
Yeah.
I mean, you want to talk about some guys that can do some math, that can figure out your power bill and get your house set up for solar energy properly.
Yeah.
And in fact, their CEO travels around doing talks about solar scams. So if you're worried about getting scammed, this is not the company that's going to do that. This is the company that exposes the scammers and
Right.
actually talks about all these tricks and ploys that they use for these. Probably many of you have seen links online about how you can get free solar here in Texas now,
Right.
which is just a complete scam.
Nobody gets free solar.
Nobody gets free anything.
Right.
But if you want to know how you can make your home more efficient, how to get energy from the sun to power your home, use a battery, use a backup generator, how you can make all those things work together, you can give them a call at 936-286-8325, and you can also send them an email over at info@truetexassolar.com. We also have our other sponsor. You got that one, Kev?
Yeah, Lone Star Appliance Repair. We've had these guys as a sponsor for a long time because they're great at what they do. In fact, my mother-in-law called me just the other day from out the pasture out behind us. She
Across the holler.
That's right. She called and she was like, "Hey, just so you know, I may need to borrow your washer because mine has filled and it won't drain, and I don't know what's going on. It's not turning on or anything. And I was like, I know the people to call, Lone Star Appliance Repair. And she was like, oh, I was going to ask if you knew someone. I was like, I always know someone. But yeah, I told her, I was like, look, you can go buy a new unit, although this one that she's had is pretty old, but it's never given her any problem.
Was it one she brought with her?
Yeah, she's had this one for probably 15 years. It's one of those one units.
The stacked.
Yeah, the stackable,
I've seen the one
but
in
it's
her house.
one
Yeah,
unit.
yeah.
And it's worked great for her. And I'm like, why would you go buy a new one whenever you can get someone out for a really reasonable rate? And then, if you wind up having them repair it, then that call, you don't pay for the call anymore.
It's like what, $95?
It's like $95 just to diagnose. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely worth it. And then, most likely they'll be able to repair it for less than what it would cost you to go buy a new one of those, and then I don't have to move it. And I don't have
those
to do
stacked
anything.
units are not cheap either.
No,
man.
they're not. They're very nice in what they do, and especially for a one-person home. It's a great opportunity. So repair your appliances. Don't just throw them in the landfill and go buy a new one. Mm-hmm. Whenever it can be repaired, it's going to be so much better for the environment. It's going to be better for you. It's going to be cheaper. And you already know your unit. So whatever it is, I mean, whether it's a dishwasher, they don't work on sinks. But
they do. Darlene confirmed it.
Well, kind of. But Lone Star Appliance Repair, give them a call or text them at 936-647-2364, and they will take care of you.
Absolutely. So, Shawn, in getting prepped for this episode, I was doing a little bit of research, and I was curious, have you come across the PBS documentary, the Life and Death in Assisted Living?
No.
No?
No.
Are you familiar with the company Emeritus?
Yes.
Okay. So the documentary is all about Emeritus, and like the if you don't know about it, I can tell you a little bit about it just because I watched it.
Okay.
It is not kind to your industry. I'll to tell you that. And the whole film starts off with these sisters whose dad was living in an emeritus facility, was able to get out of his room, unobserved. Nobody was paying attention to him. He got a hold of like some industrial cleaner, drank it, and ended up like burning his face. And he ended up in the hospital, ultimately dying from it. They filed suit against this company. And it was honestly, it seemed like kind of like a hit piece, like on assisted living.
Oh yeah.
But like it was using this multi-billion-dollar company as the bludgeoning tool to convince everybody that assisted living is this predatory entity out there that's skirting the line from regulations away from like nursing homes. And so that's what they were making that distinction there. And so like I do think that this film came out in 2013. So like this stuff's been circulating in the culture for a while. Obviously there's a difference between you and like a
big corporate.
Yes.
100%.
Because those exist.
And let me tell you, the family should file a lawsuit on things like that. I hear stories like that all the time. In fact, I have a Google alert just for the words assisted living.
In the news?
And I'll get the Google, you set those up and it's just all assisted living in headlines. Uh-huh. And they're not always good stories.
I would imagine. Well, I mean, but like that's how news makes their money, right? Is like
but I mean these
scare
are
tactics.
Horrible is clickable.
A little, true, very true. But I mean, they're real events that involve. I don't know. I think the word that keeps coming back to my mind is accountability. Mm-hmm. He shouldn't have been able to get out.
Right.
Those cleaning products should have been locked away in a cabinet.
Big time. Yep.
I mean, we keep all that stuff locked away for a very good reason. We're memory care, for crying out loud. And so because they do, people sundown, they get their days, their nights mixed up, and but again, that's a big box place. That's that Emeritus is a big senior living company, and you got your Brookdells and your Sunrise, Atria. I mean, these are big corporate providers, and again, I'm not saying they're all bad.
Sure, yeah,
but you got to understand.
But there's a difference.
There is a difference. I mean, it's a night and day difference.
Well, I think you can see that with anything. I think you can go to a chain restaurant And one restaurant's going to be phenomenal, and the one down the road is not going to be great. And it has to do with management. It has to do with the employees. It has to do with the general manager. It has to do with everything that you're working with. And you just can't expect everything to be in a big. I mean, you've got different facilities too, but they're small on purpose.
Right. Yes,
they're small on purpose.
They're small on purpose. Yeah. So I mean, dude, that's an interesting story. I mean, unfortunately, those types of stories, they happen a lot. And you know, it comes down to leadership, and it comes down to really the heart of the operator, and you know, how serious are you really taking this business? You know.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's wild.
Any story like that happens is unfortunate, you know, and so, but like I think you're kind of existing in like a happy medium, because like earlier we were talking about some of these smaller facilities, like not assisted, but like, you know, where you can only have 3,
right? You
know, and like you can look at those and go, well, okay, so like you might have 1, maybe 2 people looking in on people, and really this might be just a little bit of a money grab.
Yeah.
And then you have these big box ones where, like, you know, neglect becomes the ally of the resident almost. You know, it's and so they're, you know, the staff isn't making as much money. They've got 200 residents that they're looking after, you know, and then neglect becomes something that actually turns into harm, and ultimately death in this situation. You know, whereas like you can kind of operate and go like, okay, we're going to have, I think your one in Conroe, has 14?
It's licensed for 14.
Licensed, you know, it can have 14.
It can have 14. And, you know, I've never been above, I don't know, 12 in that home. And of course, you know, it's just a different layout. There's all semi-private rooms. You know, they're all shared rooms there, whereas Magnolia's all private room, private bath, you know. So it's a different setup, but again, it just goes back to being small, you know. But then you got guys like me. I mean, as an operator, I mean, I can pull out my phone right now and I can get on the cameras, and I can see and hear. Now, I can't see in bedrooms, but in all the common areas, I can make sure that my staff is there, you know, that they're working, that they're not, you know, being licensed, we're required to stay awake at night. The night shift cannot sleep. And I have fired people before, you know,
falling asleep.
It's just a deal breaker for me, you know? And, I mean, I've actually hired someone before for night shift, and they all interview really well, you know, and they talk a big game. And, you know, a week or 2 in, I just happened to wake up one night and can't go back to sleep, and I watched the cameras. And, you know, I'll never forget this one person that, you know, was working at the time. I didn't like the way there was a dementia resident that was there, you know, at 3 a.m., just walking in the living room, and the caregiver kind of fussed at her for blocking her view of the television.
Oh, wow.
Oh, jeez.
Her shift ended at 6 a.m. I pulled into the driveway at 6 a.m. And I said, you're not going to work here anymore. And I mean, you're out, because it's just, you know, that's, again, going back to family and accountability. That could have been my grandmother,
right?
You know, or my mom. And so, but it comes down to the heart of the operator, I feel like, and just, you know, having really high standards.
Yeah.
Well, it's part of having like principles and values in place that you like, you're not going to allow an employee to cross. You know, and once that Rubicon has been crossed, it's like, well, no, you can no longer participate, because obviously you don't share the same values and principles that like this organization is for. You know, and like, you know, and that can be a couple different things. I mean, you know, honestly, that can be the fault of the employer for not explaining those properly, or just the employee having a level of disrespect to not live up to those expectations. You know, and either way, they're gone. You know, but like, you know, but that's that's business stuff right there, man.
Yeah, for sure. What else?
What else?
Yeah, what else do we need to talk about?
Oh, we can talk about all kinds of stuff, man.
And yeah, I mean, we got.
You want to pull this clip, because I think this is this Bill Maher clip. I think this one's actually interesting, and I'm actually interested to get Shawn's reaction to it. So Bill Maher, who is, you know, obviously very vanilla and has no controversy around his thoughts and ideas. If you don't know him, he's I actually kind of like his new podcast. Have you seen his new podcast?
I haven't listened to it.
It's called Club Random.
Okay.
I enjoy that a lot more than his HBO show. What's the HBO show? It's
I don't know.
That's the one that this clip is from.
Yeah, I don't remember.
It used to be politically incorrect, but now it's something else.
Yeah.
That was back in the 90s.
Yeah. It's been a minute.
What is his show? Hang on. I'm just going to Google it real quick. Bill Maher show. I don't know.
I don't either.
Real Time with Bill Maher.
Real time.
Yeah. So, and he'll have a variety of guests on. They're usually like political pundits and lobbyists and actors and comedians and just a hodgepodge of different people. You got the clip ready?
I'm ready to go.
Let's roll it.
All right.
I saw this and I said, this is, for once, a story where they're actually doing something about income inequality, because they talk about it all the time, and I'm like, how come I pay like most of my wages every year, and we're still income inequality? What do you want, all my money? They're proposing
yes, they do.
End hedge fund control of Americans' Homes Act. Okay, basically what this means is that Wall Street started buying homes, not for them to live in, just to have. Listen to this. They purchased 26% of the single-family homes that sold in June of 2023. Some place like Charlotte, North Carolina. In 2022, investors purchased 17% of Charlotte's homes in cash.
And a lot of them more affordable homes. So, like the people who are trying to buy their own home.
Right. So Senator Merkley, Democrat of Oregon, is, I guess, proposing this. He said, Americans are bidding not against other families, they're bidding against the billionaires of America for these houses. I saw this and I said, this is for once.
Yeah, this is not. I've heard other stories about this, and really most of the time when I've heard it, it's been people targeting BlackRock, which rightfully so.
Right. Yeah.
Where they're buying up, like not just like they're not like buying like 1, 2, 3 houses. They're buying like a full book of houses, either like in a neighborhood or like in a community, like they're talking about in Charlotte, North Carolina. But like, I can't believe that it was that high of a percentage, and that was just like 1 month,
Man.
in 2023. Like that's
crazy.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And
17%.
I think one of the significant points that he mentioned in that story is that they paid cash.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Which mean there's so many things that means, but for the people selling those in affordable housing too, it's like, oh, you give me cash is so easy.
Yeah.
It's such an easy transaction. It's so easy.
Yeah.
And why wouldn't I take the cash?
You know, I think it was back in 2018, Warren Buffett was quoted saying that, you know, if he could, he would buy, 200,000 single family homes, because I guess, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Why do you think that the hedge funds are buying up, large portfolios of single family homes?
I mean, like my brain goes all kinds of different directions when you ask me a question like that. I think probably my initial response to that is because they can foresee a need that they can hold and then make a ton of money on the back end.
Yeah.
That can be the only. In my mind, that's the only logical reason that you would do that. Or market manipulation.
Yeah, but that could be a factor. If you follow, and everyone has a love-hate relationship with Grant Cardone.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. However, I think he is accurate when he says this a lot, that America is going to become a renter's nation.
For sure.
And you look at what the interest rates are doing right now. It's not a good time unless you've just got cash to burn. Or paying cash for real estate, and not having a mortgage. These rates are still bananas, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so that is when these hedge funds are pulling capital and they're making big acquisitions like that. It's just another investment play, because they can, of course, they can wholesale them, flip them, or whatever. But I mean, really, they're just going to create some really big, property management deals, and but all of those homes combined will produce a cap rate or something that's appealing to their investors, because a lot of the other investments aren't going so well.
Yeah, well, I mean, and so one of the other things that's in trouble right now, I don't have the clip from this, but like banks are in trouble.
Yeah,
and they're looking at being like upside down in like the next 2 years. They're talking about like 2025, over 300 banks being insolvent. And so, like, if you're an investment guy and you're invested in banks, and one of the biggest cash generators for banks is real estate. one of the ways that you could manipulate the market is to go like, you know what, we're actually going to reduce the inventory across the country so that home prices, if supply goes down, price is going to go up.
Yeah.
And so, well, who's going to be the biggest winner on that? It's the banks who are writing the mortgages for those. And so, like, why wouldn't it be in their best interest to just have real estate that they hold, keep off the market, especially if it's affordable housing, because those, I think they make more on FHAs than anything else. Yeah. And so you want those first-time home buyers to, on your products, to be buying new real estate at the highest possible price, because that's where you make your money.
Yeah, it's a game. It's a money game.
And, you know, if you're BlackRock, you can do that.
Yeah.
And so, like, I think, you know, I think it's worth looking at, going like, hey, like, why are you guys, why you know, if there's smoke, there's fire. And so it's worth looking at.
Yeah.
You know, and I think it's kind of weird that it takes somebody like Bill Maher to go like, hey,
Yeah.
something's going on over here.
Yeah.
You know, but like even, you know, you talk about like a Grant Cardone, I think, like, correct me if I'm wrong, I haven't kept up with him in a while, but like he's sort of notorious for like not owning the places where he lives.
100%.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, because I like real estate, and I've been following and trying to, you know, be an investor, and we own several properties now. I mean, what's the analogy? You know, live where you want to live and do business where it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's you know, one of the sayings. But yeah, I mean, not owning your home, you know, and that, to me, I think it kind of goes back to something that Robert Kiyosaki used to say in the famous Rich Dad Poor Dad book, right? You know, that your own home is a liability; it's not an asset. Whereas a lot of people, now I kind of disagree with some of that. I mean, you know, I've been in my home 10 years, and it has appreciated significantly.
You got equity,
got equity, and I can pull that out and make another move if I want to. I can borrow against myself and go buy more real estate with it. Right. So, you know, if it's in the right area and appreciation kicks in, great, you know. But I think the concept is that the American dream has changed a little bit. You know, go to college, you know, get a degree, get a job, buy a house, you know, white picket fence kind of thing. And the dream has kind of shifted. And now, you know, I mean, my oldest son is 25. I mean, he'll be, you know, looking at some of those things, but the landscape has completely changed from what it used to be. And of course now, I mean, I've been teaching my older boys, you know, they live in College Station, a lot of rental properties there. And I'm trying to convince them, you know, I'm trying to get them as an investor to shift their thinking. You know, you guys are thinking one of these days I'm going to buy a house, you know, and I'm like, dude, let's buy a fourplex.
Yes.
Right.
You live in one of the units.
House hack it.
Yeah, and house hack your way using an FHA loan at 3% down or whatever it is these days, and get started being an investor and let those tenants. And so I'm teaching them, you know, the game.
Yeah.
Because it's once you get going and you start acquiring those assets. So going back to, you know, your house is an asset or liability, I think the answer is it just depends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you use that vehicle?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, because I mean, like, you know, if one of the things that we do, like just like a simple thing is like we can rent our house out to ourselves. I think it's 4 times a year for company events.
No, it's 14 times a year.
14 times a year?
Yes.
I don't think it's that many.
It is 14 times a year.
I don't think that's
100%.
No,
He seems to be pretty.
It's 14%. It's 14 times.
It's not. That's not true.
It is.
Yeah.
I'm not wrong on this.
Oh boy.
You can look it up. 14.
House.
It's called the Augusta Rule. I'm quite familiar.
Up to 14 days. It's not 14 times.
It's still the same.
That's not the same.
It is.
Okay.
14 days.
14 days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not 4.
But you're, you know.
Anyway, it's a way that you can use your private residence.
Sure.
Legally.
Yes.
Now, when you get HOAs in play, and, you know, I mean, if you've been following vacation rentals for a while now, I mean, municipalities and cities. I mean, VRBO is pretty much shut down in New York, but I mean, even towns like College Station, they've got ordinances now that, on game day, I mean, you cannot rent your, and people squeak by it all the time.
Of course.
Or people using their lawns as parking lots.
Yeah.
Lawns as parking lots, that's a thing. But, I mean, I've known people that, that actually live in College Station, and when it's game day, they've got it listed, and they go stay somewhere else, and they rent it to, and make some pretty dang good money, I personally would feel a little weird about just grabbing just my essentials for the weekend and letting someone else just hang out at my house. But
with all my other essentials.
Yeah, exactly. I know. Just don't touch. Don't touch this or that. But I mean, it's a real estate play.
It is.
It's a real estate play.
It is.
It's just you're getting resourceful at that point.
Yeah. Well, in a place like College Station, these college towns, like people are there and they're ready to spend money.
100%.
And they have to. They have to find a place to stay. They have to find a place to park. They have to find a place to eat. They have to do those things,
Well, also in situations like that, I would imagine there's not like a lot of like Venmo going on.
Right.
No.
There's like cash exchange.
Oh, sure.
It's like good luck tracking any of it.
No,
No,
you're not going to.
So, sorry, just be honest about it. I mean, you put cash in my hand, like you're never gonna.
Yeah.
That's not going on your report.
No. No, absolutely not.
No. But yeah, I do think it comes back to like how creative you're gonna use that entity.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But like you're right, HOAs can just be a pain in the butt.
100%.
They I feel like they exist to be a pain in the butt.
Yeah.
Like, and I get it. They're there for some level of protection, but come on, man.
Yeah.
Like some of it's like really.
Well, okay. The thing with HOAs, I get the whole principle behind it.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm thankful for the neighborhood and the HOA that we have. I mean, they keep the entry of our neighborhood nice with fresh flowers and the parks in our neighborhood looking nice. But where HOAs get interesting is when you've got, a crazy person that's on the board and lives in the neighborhood and literally is just, they take it so seriously that they're driving around the neighborhood, looking at your grass, looking for things. And I'm like, come on.
The telescopic lens.
Yeah, 100%.
The measuring tape on the grass.
Exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, it's when people have nothing better to do with their time and they just want to, wreak havoc and just look for problems where there really are none.
It happens.
It does happen.
So I will tell you, I'll tell you one where it's a good thing. So like my folks live in a neighborhood that has no HOA. They actually dissolved the HOA in the mid 80s. And it's a neighborhood where I think most of the residents have 1 to 2 acres. Some people with more, but most of them have 1 to 2 acres. And as it's become an aging community, people have sold their houses and new people have moved in and realized like, oh, I'm in an unregulated area, which was, great for our family back in the 90s because we could operate a business out of there without an HOA breathing down our neck. Still operate our business out there. But 2 doors down from them was a buddy of mine. He ended up moving to Idaho and sold his family's home, and a guy bought it and said that he was going to turn it into a rehabilitation facility, which ended up being a front for a crime syndicate that he was using to like flip cars, and like for like the first year, like the cops were in the front lawn at least once a week. Wow. And not only that, all the neighbors got upset